Meg, welcome to the podcast. It's really exciting to have you on. Obviously, you go all right at this cricket thing, made a few runs and won a few trophies in your time. But over the last season, I was lucky enough to see how you go about your business, and it was fascinating. Some things really did surprise me, which we'll get into. But one thing that was 100% as expected was your elite competitiveness. Even if it was a country versus city game that you're on, you're going, you're wanting to win. Has this been something that's always been a part of you, or is it something that you've developed over time?
Well, firstly, Bo, thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to the chat today. I think I've always been pretty competitive, to be honest. Growing up in a family of 5 kids probably helped foster that a fair bit. Me and my younger sister Anna played a lot of games in the backyard, and there was always a winner and a loser. So I think my competitiveness certainly started at a very young age, and it doesn't really matter what it is. I just want to win it. I love winning and I hate losing. So sometimes I feel like I might go over the line a little bit, especially in things that probably aren't that important. But I guess it's just my natural instinct to try and win.
Yeah, I love it. And I think that's part of who you are, and that's really important to kind of get your head around, and that natural competitiveness is your instinct. And have coaches or other players in the past ever tried to tone that down in you and say, actually, Meg, you need to chill out a bit here?
Or perhaps in like environments where there's not a lot on the line, and you, I suppose if you're getting really competitive and worried about the result all the time, you perhaps don't enjoy it as much as you possibly could. So I guess from that sense, maybe that's the only thing people said, is to sort of step back and make sure you're enjoying what you're doing at the time, because I think we can get caught up pretty quickly in trying to, be as good as we can, and we forget about smiling about what we're doing. So on the field, no, but perhaps in other scenarios where perhaps it's not as important to win, I guess, probably just enjoy what you're doing a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people talk about that desire to win as a gift, in that it drives you to actually accomplish the crazy things you've accomplished, but it can also be a curse. So sometimes that gift is a curse, in the fact it's really hard to, one, switch off, but two, from a performance point of view, to let go and trust that instinct. Have you had trouble with crossing from that desire being a gift to being a curse, and how have you dealt with that?
Well, I think being so competitive and driven, I guess I have pretty high expectations on myself, and always wanting to succeed at things. So, I guess when things don't quite happen as you would like, I'm pretty hard on myself. And I guess I've learned a fair bit over time through experience, but also some guidance from other people that, especially in a sport like cricket, you actually can't be perfect all the time. It's actually impossible. So, we were actually talking about this the other day. Like, if you actually focus on all the negatives in cricket, whether it be a poor shot that you played, or, like, for example, as a batter, even if you make 100, usually you still get out. So you actually finish on a negative, even though you've actually achieved something really, really cool. And sometimes you just always think about that last shot instead of thinking about the positives a little bit more. So I think, at times I've probably been quite hard on myself, which has helped me to get to where I am. But at the same time, perhaps that puts myself under a little bit more pressure, or perhaps I don't sort of sit back and actually realize what I've achieved, or how much I'm enjoying what I'm doing.
Yeah, and that ability to sit back and take it all in is so important, because that's the moments you savor it. But at the same time, how do you balance that with actually driving and going forward and achieving the next thing?
Yeah, I think it's something I'm still working on, to be honest. And I think it naturally, sort of females in cricket, tend to not look at what their success has been, and actually, sort of look at it and be proud of what they've achieved. We sort of always move on to the next thing really, really quickly. And I think, it's something I'm trying to do, both individually with myself, but also with other team members, is actually really recognize small things that are achieved, and not just always moving on really quickly because we've got something else to get onto. So it's something I'm mindful of, and especially early in my career, I probably didn't really stop and think about what was happening, and how lucky we are to be playing sport around the world. Like it's a really cool job, and I think sometimes we can think about the pressures and the negatives and that sort of takes over our mind, when if you actually can take a second to realize what we're part of, it actually makes it a lot more enjoyable. So it's not an easy thing to do, because especially when you're competitive and driven and want to get better, and I guess if you're in a performance-based industry, but it actually makes it more enjoyable, and probably you get more out of yourself if you look at it like that.
So if we take an example, and it's potentially the toughest example, is 2017 World Cup. High expectations leading in, probably the best team on paper. Miss out to get to the semi-final, have pretty much dominated throughout, and get done by arguably a one-man show and Harvey going absolutely nuts. How do you, so in that moment, once she's going as a captain, how do you process that? And then following that, what's the reflection like when you say, so you've been saying you need to look at the positives, but that's quite a clearly defining moment in a lot of your careers. How do you then process that?
Yeah, so like that whole World Cup has, I think, been a really massive learning curve for everyone who was involved in that, individually and as a team. I think we probably felt like we were going better than what we were. And when we got put sort of under the spotlight and under the pump by Harmanpreet Kaur, which was a very unique innings. She's not really played one since then. But, she was just on that day. When that sort of happened, we didn't really know how to react, or we couldn't react in a good way. So, we probably found out a little bit about where exactly we were at. And once that sort of finished that game, like in the game, we couldn't stop the momentum. We didn't know how to sort of change things up and actually sort of fight a fair bit. So that was a little bit of a wake up call, I guess. And then in the aftermath of that, obviously we copped a bit of scrutiny from outside and inside, to be honest. Like everyone was a little bit shocked, but I guess like looking back, even before that, the warning signs were probably there, and we probably hadn't sort of addressed them because we sort of felt like we were going okay. So our reliance on sort of 2 or 3 players, our unwillingness, I guess, to force the game and actually take the game on and use the skills that we had, we probably didn't quite understand until that sort of moment. So it was a bit of a wake up call in that. And then that's all the negative stuff. And to be fair, it took me a fair while to get over all that, and constantly sort of thinking about what could have happened, what could have been done differently. And but once from that moment on, though, like it's actually been turned into a real positive, because we got forced into change in a way. But since then we've been a completely different team, and I think as individuals we've been a lot less selfish. We've been more about the team and understanding what's required to win the game for the team. So I guess there was a lot of negatives initially, but it's actually one of those moments where, even though it wasn't fun at all at the time, it's actually probably one of the best things that happened to us, because it was a wake up call we needed to really make sure we're getting the most out of what we've got.
So are you or the Australian team much of a values person? So you have defined values?
I'm a bit hot and cold on values. I've been in a lot of teams where you come up with honesty, making sure we're hitting the cone, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. And like sounds really good in theory, but it actually just sits on a piece of paper and nothing ever gets done about it. And I've been in a lot of teams where that's happened. But since the 2017 World Cup, when we sat down and reflected on the game and where we were and what we wanted to do moving forward, like we came up with a sort of a set of values. And they're not really groundbreaking, but they've actually got some really good actions to them that everybody can relate to, and individually what that means for them. And it's sort of the first time that I've felt like values or what the culture that you want has actually really driven how the team operates, and we often refer back to them and talk about them a lot. And it makes a really big difference, but it's sort of the first time I've seen it work. And it takes a while to get to that point, and it's different for every team. There's no right formula, to be honest. You've sort of got to work your way through it. But yeah, I've really enjoyed that process, I guess, and finally cracking how to get some team values that actually relate to everyone in the squad. I think it's a really big challenge.
Yeah, so how did you actually do that? Because that's something that, like, I know we had Locke last year, who was very much anti-values. They're not useful.
Yeah.
I kind of am similar in one sense, in that, like, same thing. The amount of times you sit in pre-season meetings for hours on end, come up with these words, and then they mean nothing. But at the same time, I think you can go too far with that and just let things float off, which is potentially what happened prior to the 2017 World Cup. And particularly if you're good and you're performing, no one questions anything. Like when you're winning games, don't get questioned. But when you have loss, it's what we call the post-traumatic growth. The hardest part, though, is how did you actually, well, a couple of specific things is nut out what they were, but make them actionable for individuals and relevant for individuals.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the fact that we went through the 2017 World Cup, I guess, yeah, could call it a traumatic moment. I guess the fact that we went through that actually really helped us, because it meant we needed to bring something in, like a framework. And I think we had values before that, but I mean, I couldn't tell you what they were, and they probably didn't really resonate. Didn't really resonate with the squad. So, yeah, I think like that really helped us, and obviously every team doesn't have that, but I think it had a really big impact on it. And then it took quite a number of long sessions of people throwing ideas around, and a lot of it was around like how we wanted to be perceived, I guess, and how we wanted to actually be off the field but also on the field. And yeah, it took a number of hours in coming up with all these different words and whatnot, but you know, like the two main ones are team first and fearless. Oh, sorry about that. Oh, I'm back. Yeah, like team first and fearless. So they're not groundbreaking words, but the way we actually brought them back to individuals was by, so every individual sort of talks to the group around what fearless means to them, and what, if they're being fearless, it looks like this. So therefore it's not just a word that's sort of, oh yeah, we're fearless. It's actually, there's an action associated with it, and it's different for everyone, because that's the biggest challenge is had, you know, with a group of people bringing sort of 15 different personalities and people from different backgrounds and beliefs, it's pretty hard to get one word that actually relates to everybody. So the fact that we, you know, everybody can individually put forward and articulate to the group so everybody is aware of what it exactly looks like, I think that's played a really big role as well.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I love that. In terms of their team first fearless, you pretty much have it in every team. That's what you want. But what does that actually mean? Because you've got so many different personalities, so many different belief systems, and then bringing them together to actually achieve a common goal is really difficult. Did you have any moments after, in the years after, where you actually hold someone accountable to that, so they weren't courageous or they weren't team first, or is it something that individuals kind of did themselves?
It's more an individual thing, and I guess the idea that we wanted is we wanted to start creating like conversations. So we tend to find out, I feel like in most female cricket teams, well, the ones that I've been involved in, big group stuff, like people don't talk up and have those conversations. So we sort of recognized that, and that was fine. It was more around trying to develop ways for people to have little conversations with someone else and actually get an understanding of it that way. So I think there's a lot of learnings that happen that way in cricket, and I think it's a really good way to do it, because people are more honest and able to have the tougher conversations, I guess, with, you know, instead of the big group forum, which doesn't tend to work. So I think that's sort of more the way that we wanted to lean.
Yeah, and you talk a lot about, in terms of leadership, off field and on field. I've heard you say on field's the easy part. And off field, empathy, building relationships is the harder part. You strike me as a little bit more of an introvert, would you agree with that? And how have you managed that in terms of building those relationships and connecting with those people around you?
Yeah, I think that's pretty good observation. I tend to do my own thing, and I'm a pretty closed book, so I tend to feel like it's not really anyone else's business to sort of know what's happening. But yeah, I think that is a quote that I use a little bit. On the on-field stuff's easier than the off-field stuff, because a lot of the on-field stuff is instinct and comes a little bit more naturally to me. But the off-field stuff in terms of building relationships and the empathy side of things is something I've been working on for a long time, and still am. And I guess it's just, I think the empathy part's the most important, is actually trying to understand how others think and feel, because it's not going to be the same as me. And I think that's probably the view that I had early on as captain, is that I'm thinking this, so everybody else must be as well. And it's all very different. And I guess I learned that very early on, that there are so many different personalities, and you've got to try and work out how you're going to get the best out of everybody in the squad, not just the people that you get on really well with easily. And I guess that's something I try to focus on. I don't do it perfectly, but I try to at least make a connection with everybody in the squad, in some way, rather than, I think sometimes as a player you can just hang around with the people that you want to, and you sort of have to build those relationships. But as captain, I think that's a really important part of it, and a leader. So I try and force myself, I guess, in a way, to try and get to know everybody and understand, where they're coming from, I guess, because not everybody thinks the same as I do.
And to be fair to you, that's one thing I noticed straight away, and I mentioned at the start the things that I didn't quite expect, in terms of you genuinely made an effort to say hi or get to know every single person in that squad in Vic, and we had a pretty big squad, so it's a fair effort. Like most times you wouldn't even get to, like, just generally floating about, you wouldn't even see half the members in the squad because there were so many people there. But something, to be fair to you, and like, well done, is as someone that was new in the squad, you genuinely could see you were making an effort, even though it doesn't always come as naturally as a strand over line. We're getting to your deep, dark secrets just as you walked in the room. But and it made a big difference. It really did. So from a player's point of view, like, to be fair, you're walking in and it's Meg Lanning, or you got Elise Perry, and you got these huge names that I've only ever seen on TV or played against. And the ability to just be yourself and just go about your business as you normally do, it made such a big difference to me. And I assume people that are a lot more confident, be around for a longer, it builds on year to year.
People say that I'm scary, and I'm a bit like, scary? Like, what do you mean? But like, I sort of starting to like work out what that means. And I think what I have worked out is it's a little bit of my responsibility to try and break down that barrier, because like, it can be daunting. You sort of, you forget. When I walked into the Victorian squad at 16, like, I was scared. Like, I didn't want to talk to Kelly Appleby or Cass Fitzpatrick. Like, it's easy to sort of forget that really quickly. So, I can I think initially I might have been like, oh, they'll come up and say hi or whatever, but it's actually my responsibility, I think, to try and break that down as quick as I can, and try and make everybody realize that I'm just a normal person like everybody else. I might have the title, I guess, but that doesn't, I'm still just a player within the squad. Everyone's sort of on level footing. And I think that sort of things, just sort of in my mindset, sort of understanding what, why people are thinking that, and trying to make it a bit easier for them, I guess.
Well, that's pretty much it. That's the crux of it. It's that we spend so long idolizing people and putting them up on this pedestal, thinking they're amazing and they're superhuman. And for me to achieve even close to what Meg's achieved, for example, I need to be perfect. But that very essence it's not true, in that you've got your fears, you've got your insecurities. Like, you're scared of talking to a youngster as much as they are scared of talking to you. But I suppose lessons in leadership and what makes you good is the courage to actually be able to do that. And you're very wise in what you're saying now, but you were a captain at 21. Was, I assume, at 21, getting thrust into it after Jodie Fields gets injured, some of these things that weren't as natural, And how did you manage that whole scenario of literally walking in and capturing your country at such a young age?
I literally was making it up as I went along, to be perfectly honest. I've never done any captaining, vice captaining of any cricket sides I've been involved in until
Really?
I was vice captain. Nothing. I was just a player doing my own thing. Pretty happy. Like I'd never even thought about being a leader or being a captain. Like it wasn't on the radar at all. I was just going on doing my own thing. Pretty happy, contributing here and there. To be thrust in pretty quick was a challenge, but in a way, like given my personality, I think I tend to go with the flow a little bit and sort of like even now to this day, I sort of do make things up as I go along. So in a way, it actually was quite helpful. I didn't have any thoughts around what it should look like or what sort of leader I should be or anything like that. I was literally just sort of getting used to it on the fly. So there was a lot of positives to that, I think. But at the same time, having not done it before, there was so much more to the role than I anticipated or understood. And even right from the start, I felt like the on-field stuff was something I had a better handle on. I've definitely improved sort of tactically and understanding the play and what works and what doesn't. But that sort of seemed to come more naturally. And the other side, the relationship sides, the working with the staff and the players and trying to get the best out of everybody, I had no real idea on what was actually involved in trying to achieve that. That was a bit of a shock to the system, I guess, that sort of stuff. And really from then on, I've been working pretty hard on that side of things. I've done like a lot of sort of 360-degree surveys and feedback and whatnot. And like, that sort of relationship, empathy, emotional side of things is an area where I probably didn't score as well in. And initially it was sort of quite hard to hear, I guess. And it wasn't easy feedback to hear, but over time I've sort of understood a little bit around how it works and how other people feel and I guess how important that is to being successful as a team. So it's something I've been aware of for a long time and trying to continually work on. I'm certainly not perfect at it now. It's something I always think about a fair bit. But I guess that's where you need to have the people around you as well to be able to sort of fill the gaps a little bit in terms of what you're good at and what you're not good at. And that in the Australian team, Rachel Haynes is the perfect person for me because the relationships, sort of getting a feel for things is something that she's really, really good at. So she sort of takes the pressure off me a little bit in that area, and we work pretty well as a team. So I think that's a really important part of it as well, is you can't do everything yourself and you can't be good at everything. You can try to be, but at the end of the day, if you can try and get other people who are good at those sort of roles around you, then that sort of fills the gap a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And did you have anyone helping you in terms of not so much complimenting you as a teammate, but someone that was like a leadership mentor or coach or a personal coach from when you're growing up, or someone around you that you can kind of just lean on a little bit outside the program or within it?
It's a good question. To be honest, I've never really had a proper mentor. I've always had heaps of conversations with different people. I remember talking to Belinda Clark a lot when I first took over the role. She took over the role at a very young age as well. So she was someone I spoke to a fair bit over the time. But I don't really have a specific mentor who, I'd always go to. I feel like I do like hearing different perspectives all the time and trying to learn as much as I can from the information people have gotten. I feel like I've developed a pretty good filter over time in terms of listening to all the information and seeing how it can fit in with me and then sort of, either using it or perhaps, that's not for me. I'll sort of forget about that. And I don't sort of get too wound up, I guess, if there's too much information. So I just tend to try and learn off anyone who is willing to give information, I guess, and experiences on what leadership is. And it's because it's so unique. Like there's no right or wrong way. That's the thing. It's up to the individual. So you can always learn some new things.
Yeah, and that makes a lot more sense to me than the old school model of here is your mentor, your specific thing. And it's like the perspective that you get from lots of different people, but at the same time, understanding that you're your own person, and you can actually go about things. And that instinct that you've mentioned a few times, that comes from being yourself. And if you're just so like narrowed in into one thing or one stream of information, it can be really hard to get that perspective and that instinct. So when it comes to your batting and actually trusting that instinct, if I could describe you in one word, I reckon it would be instinct. Watching you bat, it's kind of like see the ball and hit it. And don't take this the wrong way, but it's almost like you're making it up as it goes along. But I think that's a strength in that you're able to problem solve on the go. Has this always been a strength as well, or is that something you've had to develop?
I think naturally from a young age, all I really worried about was scoring and actually making runs. I've never really been obsessed with technique and what it looks like. And I think that has helped me along the way because, realistically, it's never going to look perfect or how you want it to look. So it actually gives you a bit of a release to be able to just get the job done, if that makes sense. And it's going to be different each game depending on what's happening. And one thing I have found in cricket, that you plan for one thing to happen and the opposite usually happens. So you can go in with this really grand plan around what you want it to look like, but it never it never pans out that way. Like as an opening batter in T20 cricket, you can go out in the power play and I might face 5 balls, like the other opener might face the rest of them. So it's a totally different scenario to what you think going out there to open in the T20 looks like. So I think my ability, I guess, to just adapt to the situation, but at the crux of it is I want to score runs and make runs as quickly as I can. That's really the main thing that I'm thinking about.
And how much preparation in terms of analysis do you do then? Because obviously anything can happen in the game. How much do you prepare for the game?
I think most of my preparing would be done in my mind. I'm not a big vision watcher. And even like last year's WBBL, I didn't really watch any of
That's an
the
understatement.
other games.
Avoided it.
Because for a few reasons, because we're in the hub and obviously cricket was everywhere. I sort of wanted to try and step away from that a little bit. And I also don't want to have something in my mind that's going to happen. And like, as I said, like often it's very different. So, of course, having played the game for a while now, I know the bowlers and the players. So if there's a new player who comes in who I haven't seen, I will like quick look just to see what they do and then, what sort of variations they might have. But that's really the only time I'll watch some vision. But other than that, I'm sort of formulating ideas in my mind, I guess. So, in the session before we play a team, if they've got, a couple of opening bowlers who swing the ball away, I'll try and do a little bit of practice on that just so I've got, a little bit of practice under my belt with that. But, I think, I probably think about it more than what I realize, but a lot of it is in my mind, this sort of vague idea of how I want it to look, but I never go in and think this, I'm going to play this shot, I'm going to do this to this bowler. Like you obviously got an idea, but I really just want to watch the ball and react as much as I can.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then in terms of training, we've got a lot of over trainers. In that you'll see Elise Perry hitting balls for hours and hours on end. I'll go out, we'll go get a coffee, have lunch, come back, she's still and she's not the only one. A lot of the youngsters coming through, whether they're Aussie contracted or not, train a lot, and myself included. You're someone that seems to know when to stop, in that like you're like, yeah, I've had enough, or no, I'm not hitting today. Like decisive, you know exactly what you're doing. It's like you have that deep trust in how much you need to do. How do you go about doing that? 'Cause it's so rare.
It's something I've learned, and I definitely wasn't like that all the time. And I will preface this with saying that it's different for everybody. So Elise Perry hits thousands of balls, but that's like her way of getting in the zone. So I mean, I look at her when she's doing that and I just couldn't think of anything worse, but she loves it. So, and it works for her. So it's so unique. And that's, I think, the biggest challenge for people out there is working out what it is that's going to get them in the best mindset, I think, to make runs. And it's not what the person next to you is doing. There might be elements of it, but it's not everything that they're doing. And that's a big challenge for young players coming in and obviously seeing other people do what they do. And it's great to observe and look at it, but still trying to formulate what works for you is, I think, a really good process to try and go through. I've gotten to the point now where I probably hit a fair bit in pre-season. So I try to get like a lot of my volume hitting done in pre-season. So I feel like I've got that bank behind me. And a lot of it is so that when I do get in season, I don't have to do big amounts. It's actually about staying fresh and being mentally ready for what I want to do. So that's the theory behind it. So, I actually think a lot of it changed in 2017. So at the World Cup, I had a shoulder injury. Right. And I didn't train throughout the whole World Cup pretty much. Like in the nets during the week between games, I wasn't training at all. And I sort of knew that heading into the World Cup that might happen. And I did a little bit of chat with our sports psych, and I guess, and this is not rocket science in any way, but I guess where I got to was that you can either talk yourself into something or you can talk yourself out of something before you even start. So I had to pretty much talk myself into the fact that I was like, no, you've hit thousands and thousands of balls in the last, 10 years, really 10, 15 years. Missing one training session before a game, does it really make that much of a difference? Like, no, it doesn't. So I sort of had to talk myself into that fact and just get used to the fact that, no, doesn't matter. Like, it actually, the only thing that matters is how I approach the game and play in the game. Whether I fit the day before or not, it actually is irrelevant. So that was a big turning point for me, I think. And since then I've, learned to just, not worry about things that are actually not that important in terms of how much I fit or anything like that, just being able to adjust. And, I try to, just, if I'm hitting balls before a game or the day before a game, it could be 10 minutes, it could be half an hour. Like, it's just a bit of a feel thing. It's not I have to bat for 30 minutes or an hour or anything like that. And that's something I've developed over the last sort of 3 or 4 years. Just knowing that the preparation, not just like in the last few months, it's actually over like a 10-year period, means that you can play. It's actually about your mindset on game day, as opposed to whether you hit the day before or not.
Yeah, you say that so simply, and that it's like, oh, you can talk into it, that's all right. But I can see, and I assume you're probably pretty similar. A lot of the girls are like, no, I need to hit, I need to bowl my ball, I need to tick off all these boxes, otherwise I'm not ready to play. But I suppose the point is, like, if you can get yourself irrelevant of what it is to headspace where you're ready to go and you're ready to look to score or look to do whatever it is you need to do in the game to win the game for the team, you're good to go.
I was just going to say, like, when I bat in the nets, for example, like, if I face the first 5 balls or 10 balls, whatever, and I get out in the first few, it actually annoys me for the whole session, because I'm like, well, if I did that in a game, I actually would be out, and it actually is irrelevant if half an hour later I'm hitting the balls in the middle and like smashing them. Like, I'm sort of a bit like, that wouldn't happen in the game. So that's why, so when I do train, I actually want to do it properly. Because you can't go into a game and not be switched on, because you don't get those chances down the track. So it's sort of a bit like, I could hit for an hour, but I've just sort of wasted it a little bit in the first little bit because I wasn't concentrating. So that's also why I probably don't hit as much, is because I want it to be really good quality and where I'm paying attention, as opposed to just hitting for the sake of it, because otherwise it becomes just a little bit of pointless hitting that you're not getting anything out of.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I really like that. So in terms of that intensity and the concentration piece, do you have a specific pre-ball routine or between ball routine at all?
I probably do more so than what I realise, but I mark centre a lot when you're batting with me. You know where centre is because I do it a minimum 3 times between each ball. I'll usually do it sort of straight after I face the ball, and then I'll walk away, and then when I come back to the crease, I'll do it again, and then I'll set up. So that's probably my signal to myself to switch back on, because that is like an important thing, I think, to be able to switch on and off a little bit rather than, you know, fully concentrating the whole time. And I quite enjoy batting with someone who is pretty relaxed and sort of likes to chat. It's probably why myself and Junior like batting together so much, because, you know, we do tend to laugh a lot and have a smile on our face, and that's when I feel like, you know, I'm you know, relaxed in between balls, but then I'm switched on when I'm facing. So that's probably the main thing for me.
So I can blame you for having to stand in a crater most net sessions when you're when you're 5'2" and you've already lost a bit of height. It doesn't help. But in saying that, when you're under pressure, then so a lot of coaches will preach a specific routine, or like it's not necessarily only in cricket, but golf is a big one as well. Obviously, a very close sport. It's not as reactive. Or you have your specific thing that you do over and over again. I don't like it either. I'm quite similar to you. It's just that one thing to switch on. If you're under pressure though, or the heat's on, the game's going a little bit quick in your head, how do you then bring yourself back to a calm state to be able to make good decisions?
I think it's sort of just having a bit of a focus, perhaps on like where the game's at. So, you know, if we've lost a couple of quick wickets and I'm out there batting, it might just be that you're sort of just settling the team down a little bit and actually just sort of taking a quiet period to get back into it. So that's what I'm thinking about. It's not really anything specific with my technique or what I'm doing. I actually try to think about the game more so, because that sort of, I feel like there's a little bit less pressure on me, if that makes sense. Like I'm not just thinking about what I'm doing. I'm actually thinking about a sort of a broader focus, which you know, I think helps me to get through different periods and you know, pressure moments, I guess, because that's sort of what's the most important. So I guess you take your focus away from yourself and think about the overall situation, and then obviously my individual routine with each ball. But I tend to find that helps a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And that there's I reference Johnny Wilkinson a lot, but he actually apologized for writing his first book, because he was and it was when he won the World Cup with England here, and it was all about like needing to be fully in yourself and focusing on yourself and the routines and performance and like setting these huge goals, and that's all that matters. And then he realized, and he speaks a lot about the lack of self-importance, and it's more so like doing, what's my job here? What job do I need to do? What does the team need from me now? And when you take yourself or your ego out of it, it's all of a sudden, all right, that's what I got to do, so let's go and do it. You know, like little things like your breath and your body and all those things can help if you're really struggling. But just as simple as, what does a game need from me, made all the difference to him, and he ended up coming back from a pretty low bit in his career to performing again. And moving forward in your career, are you trying to be the best, or are you trying to be your best?
I think I'm trying to be my best, but like part of it is wanting to contribute to success. So yeah, I'm not really fussed about like rankings and runs and all that sort of stuff. I'm more interested in actually contributing to wins that we have as a team. So yeah, I'm not really sure if I've answered the question or not, but yeah, I don't really look at what too many other people are doing or what, you know, what they're sort of trying to get to. I'm sort of just focused on doing that. And I guess if I'm getting better and improving, then I'm going to be able to help contribute to wins. I feel like, you know, in my batting position at 3, I think I've got like such a great opportunity to impact every game I play in. So I want to use that as much as I can.
So so say we're in pre-season at the moment, there's a huge, probably 2 years coming up for you guys. Are you actively trying to improve your game, or is it more so a maintenance thing where you're just trying to stay in rhythm and stay in flow?
No, I'm actively trying to improve. So, well, I guess there's two sides of it. So I'm actively trying to improve in developing areas I can get the ball to. But something I'm actually focusing on this preseason as well is like really nailing my strengths, because I feel like perhaps last year a little bit, I got a little bit focused on trying to hit different areas because that's what you sort of think you should do. Whereas this year I'm focusing on literally playing to my strengths and hitting that as much as I can and being really, really, really good at that. And then there's another element, like a sort of a side piece of hitting to a different spot, like a different shot. So I've just sort of said two different things, but it's a little bit of both. I think sometimes we can forget what we're good at and we just try to get better at everything else, when if you just stay like amazing at one area that's got you to where you are and just sort of tweak here and there, bring in different things, you need to evolve, but don't ever move away too far from what you're good at and what got you there in the first place. I think it can be easy to be sidetracked.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned in terms of being the best or your best, it's the team-based things that motivates you in terms of getting the big World Cups, or I know there's WBBL, I suppose New Zealand next year is quite a big one that you guys are working towards at the moment. How much are you externally motivated compared to internally motivated? Internal, just literally the process of getting better or doing what you love?
I think I'm a little bit of both, to be honest. Like as I said, like earlier on, I have really high expectations on myself and I expect to be perfect every time, and that doesn't happen, but I aim for it as much as I can. And I guess cricket's a unique sport in the fact that it's sort of an individual team game. So if you're individually improving, then that also helps the team. So it's a fine line, but I'd much rather take no runs and winning the World Cup next year, as opposed to me making heaps of runs and us losing. So but in my mind, I'm like, if I'm making runs, that's going to help us win. So that's the important thing as well. But I think winning tournaments and World Cups and whatnot is a very important part of everything that I do.
Yeah, I really like that, and I've been through both sides of things and seen a lot of players on both sides. So generally, initially, fully externally motivated, like want runs, World Cups, play for Australia, you got all the things externally, can cause a lot of issues. And then you're like, oh, I've got to be internal. It's got to be just about me and just getting better every day. But then I still think you need that external side. So the process is potentially, sounds like to you, the process is more internal. So the process is, I want to keep getting better. Like I want to improve. I want to improve the people around me. I want to do what I love every day. But then the external is like, that gives you the direction that you're going. Would that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And that's the thing, like, as I said, like with cricket, if each individual is improving and getting better, as long as there's a direction in which you're traveling that's similar, you're going to be better as a collective. So it's hard to find that balance, because you want people to bring their individual flair and points at I guess strengths. But there's got to be an element of working in the same direction, which is the important part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so final few questions we ask most of the guests that come on. The first one is, what do you hope the next generation gets right?
I just think like we've made, like the last 10 years, the opportunities for young girls to play the game has just improved so much. And I hope that continues to happen. And I also hope that the World Cup final that we had last year is not a one-off and never happens again, because we feel like we've made it. I hope that we have many more of those moments to come.
And how important is legacy to you?
I think it's really important. I think in 50 years' time, the team that you played in, and also individually, you within that team, you want to have moved the game forward and had a positive impact on those around you and the sport. And that's an important part of what I do and how I sort of carry myself, I guess, on and off the field. Is, 10 years ago, the game was very different, and, players weren't getting paid very much. There weren't very many opportunities. So we're very lucky to be where we are, but I hope in 10 years' time, it's double what it is now. So that's where we want to get to. It's not just, enjoying what we're doing now because we're getting paid to do it. We've got opportunities, and it doesn't really matter what happens down the track. It actually is really important. And I guess just making sure that while we're involved in the game, that it's tracking in the right direction.
Absolutely. And how do you go with balance in terms of life outside of cricket?
Well, I think it's probably something I could still evolve. I'm sort of getting better at it, but I do. Cricket is a massive part of my life, and I guess it is technically my full-time job. But I think it's really important to have something else that can take your mind off it. And I probably haven't found exactly what that is yet. I've done a little bit of study here and there, which has been nice. But I guess just being able to switch off fully and have another hobby, I guess, something that can sort of engage me, is something I'm still searching for a little bit. So, I feel like I can have days off and go and grab a coffee at a cafe. I'm not sure if you know, but I love a coffee and a brunch at a local cafe. You'll find me there. So I can do that, but I also do feel like it'd be nice to have something with a real purpose, I guess, that, really is engaging me off the field to make sure that when I am on the field that I'm fully engaged and fresh, I guess. So it's a work in progress.
No chance of hitting the LPGA?
Well, by the way I've been playing of late, I've still got the Lenny Cup, by the way. I found it the other day. We haven't played for a while. But the way I've been playing recently, I'm not sure I'd hold on to it. So I might just wait for the next round a little while.
And so what is high performance to you?
High performance is firstly giving everything a crack and actually putting your full effort in. Kath Hempinstall, who you would know, used to have the term "do the effort," and I just think that's a really good way of putting it. Like, firstly, you need people who are going to do that, and I think you also need people who are willing to be, I guess, courageous in trying new things and seeing what's possible. So that mix of hard work and putting the effort in, but also willing to push the boundaries, I think, is an important part of it to keep things moving forward. So, sort of consistency in effort and application, and then, the willingness to step outside the box.
Awesome. And how would you define success?
That's achieving what you set out to achieve. I think it's different for everybody. Some things are more individual, some things are team-based, and that's the beauty of cricket, I think, is that it there's so many different ways to go about it. And you actually want to be really diverse within your squad, both in personalities, but also the way you play. And I think it really just depends in what you want to achieve. But if you can set something that you want to do and you go and do it, then that's success.
Absolutely. And final question, who is Meg Lanning at her best?
Meg Lanning at her best has a smile on her face and is just reacting to what is coming. There's no real thought about what might come. It's literally just reacting to what's happening and going with the flow.
Instinct. I love it. So Meg, thanks for coming on. And one thing I think we said at the start is there are things that surprise me, but I think those are the key parts that make you who you are. You always say hi to everyone. You take a genuine interest, and something that Tess Flintoff opened my eyes to is that you're someone, just the little things, like you always throw the balls back to the bowler properly when they're bowling at you. You're always...
I try anyway.
It's funny, some of the best cricketers, some of the worst under-armers, but
I'm probably in that category.
but what I'm trying to say is just the little things that I think you did really well, and it was a privilege for me to be able to see that for a season. And that's what makes superstars. It's the little things, it's the little moments, but it's also that trust and that courage to keep pushing yourself and taking yourself out of that comfort zone. So you really are superstar both on and off the field, and I'm looking forward to see how things pan out for you.
Cool. Thanks very much for having me, Barbie.
No worries. Thanks for tuning in. If you want to continue to be part of the Inside Edge project, hit subscribe or leave a comment below. We're also on all major social media platforms. I look forward to having you along next time.